Hello and welcome to Football League World TV. I'm Marcus Ali. I'm hosting for the fan debate with Blackpool fan Lee Charles TV joining me today. Thanks a lot, Lee. How are you doing today?
I'm absolutely fine, Marcus. Thank you very much for asking. Happy up here in the north.
It's a good time to be a Blackpool fan at the
It's a
moment,
great
isn't
time
it?
to be a Blackpool fan. Yeah, it's never been better, to be honest. It's amazing at the moment for us. We're happy to be back in the Championship. We're happy to be back watching football. We got our club back after 5 years of not a penny more protests against the Oystons, because the Oystons basically took all the Premier League money and also were suing fans. So we boycotted the games for 5 years. We got football back, and then coronavirus came and we lost it again. So this season we're back after a long time. So it's fantastic and we're enjoying it. We really are. We're enjoying it and we're loving being back in the Championship, to be honest. I think it's the best, the best league there is. I think the Premier League, it's okay. There's a lot of things I didn't like about the Premier League. I can go on and on if you want me to tell you what I didn't like about the Premier League. I liked obviously playing United and Liverpool and all these, massive clubs. I didn't like the referees because they were really, they really pandered to the bigger club, and they seem to get the bit, the decisions. Particularly Alex Ferguson did when we were playing United, beating them 2-0 at half time. We had a definite penalty, like an absolute nailed on. On the TV, they said it was like, what out of 10, what was it? What sort of penalty was it? They said 11 out of 10 because it just, honestly, they just took Luke Varney just straight out, nowhere near the ball, just took him completely out. And they didn't give a penalty, and of course United went on to beat us 3-2. And if that penalty had gone in, we'd have stayed in the, just that one. That's just one example of things that went against in the Premier League. I didn't like the way they kept moving games around. So you'd have like a Saturday game and then they changed it to a Sunday. So you'd end up arranging things and then missing. So it's a bit of a nightmare, and you don't get as many games, you know what I mean? And games kick off at all daft sort of times. So it's very rare you're playing on a Saturday afternoon at 3:00, which is, that's, to me, that's when football should, Saturdays and Tuesday nights, whatever. But it was a bit weird with Sky. You're all over the place. So Championship's really good. Some great clubs in it. Some really, some big clubs. And it's winnable.
Yeah, absolutely. Clearly, a lot to ponder on following Blackpool in the
There is.
last decade. If you are a
Yeah.
Blackpool fan watching this, please do get in touch with us via the comments section. I'll put your suggestions to Lee, but without further ado, let's get into it.
All right.
So as you can see by the title of the video, Lee has ranked his top 5 best Blackpool strikers of all time. I know it's not been an easy decision and has taken a lot of consideration, but let's get into number 5.
Yeah.
So I know number 5 is a player from yesteryearly, player that you didn't see yourself, but his reputation and the way he's been portrayed to you meant he had to be on this list.
Yeah, I was brought up on tales of this player. His name is Stanley Mortensen, Stan Morty, known as Morty to most Blackpool fans. He has a statue at the back of the North Stand at Blackpool, and he scored a hat-trick in the 1953 Cup final, which is famously known as the Stanley Matthews final, because Stanley Matthews had won everything from the Ballon d'Or to the league, to the league titles and everything, but he'd never won an FA Cup medal, an FA Cup winners medal, and he won his only FA Cup medal with Blackpool in 1953. Blackpool were losing with not very long to go, and came back to win 4-3. I think they were 3-1 down with 3-1 down, 3-1 down. They came back anyway. Morty scored the hat-trick, and of course he's the only man ever to score a hat-trick in an FA Cup final, but they called it the Matthews final. But to every Blackpool fan, it's the Mortensen final. To everyone in England, they always call it the Matthews final. But for Blackpool fans, it was the Morty final because he got a hat-trick, and obviously Matthews, it was called that because he got his FA Cup winners medal. But it must have been hard on him to actually score a hat-trick, the only hat-trick ever in a Wembley final, have the final named after Stanley Matthews. But he was a very humble man, and I don't think it bothered him really. But Yeah, that's Stanley. He actually played for Blackpool from 1941 to 1955, so a long time before I was born. He played 317 games and he scored 197 goals in that time, so he was pretty prolific. And he also had a war. There was also the war years as well, where he scored loads of goals, playing for all sorts of teams during the war years as well. So yeah, prolific.
Absolutely. So a player not just on this list for that one performance in isolation, obviously starring in one of one of the greatest days in Blackpool's history, I think you'd have to say. So it was
Yeah.
Mortensen's longevity as well as that iconic performance that has him in fifth place.
Absolutely. And I think I'm pretty sure my dad used to tell me that he had a steel plate in his forehead. I think it was from something that happened in the war, and of course he could just go in against boots and everything with his head, because he didn't feel anything. So he was like, he was so hard. He was one of these strikers that every fan loves. He would just he would just go in head first, head in, and just really brave. So he was just known for just being a fantastic centre forward. So, and of course Matthews was the king of dribble. He was a winger that just could take players on and beat them hands up. You just couldn't get the ball off him. So he was just at that the glory years of Blackpool, really, where we were actually, when the war. In fact, actually, a fun fact for you. But if there's ever a pub quiz, which team has been the longest, stayed the longest at the top of the sort of like the Premier League or Division 1 as it was then, it would be Blackpool, because we were top of the league as war started, and we were still top of the league when war finished. So we were top of the league from 1939 to 1945, as we were top of that division when war broke out. So if there's ever a pub quiz question, that's your team that has been the longest at the top.
I'm sure they would have been a great duo to observe at the time as well. We're moving into the Premier League era, and Blackpool's most recent stay in the Premier League with this next pick. So, Lee, who is the number 4 on the list?
Number 4 is DJ Campbell. He came on loan to Blackpool in 2009, and then he played 20 games, scored 9 goals, and then we got him back in 2010, and he was in a big part of Blackpool getting promoted into the Premier League. He scored a hat-trick in the playoff final away at Nottingham Forest, scored a goal in the final, and he's just a legend for the fact that he did that. He was an amazing player. We didn't see enough of him. We had him 2 seasons on loan, and we had him in the Premier League, but there was a release clause in it if we got relegated. And of course, I think we signed him for 1.25 million when we went into the Premier League, and then we had a release clause. There was a release clause. If anybody came in for 1.25 million, if we got relegated, he'd go, and somebody did, and obviously he went. But he's always going to be a legend at Blackpool Football Club for that, for bringing us, really, for the hat-trick away at Forest, which was incredible. To go there and win in the way we did was just unbelievable. So every Blackpool fan to actually get to that championship final was a miracle, but to actually then get into the Premier League was like beyond. You didn't really believe it, to be honest. Blackpool fans, I don't think really kind of believe they're in the Premier League, and until about October, November, it started to dawn on us that we're actually in the Premier League, because it was just such a miracle. Blackpool were the bookies' favourites to go down that year, and I've actually interviewed a few of the former players, and Ollie said to all the players in that season, he came in, he said, I've got a deal for you. He said, if we get into the Premier League, and this was like the start of the season when you can imagine Blackpool like bookies' favourites to go down. So Ollie said to the players, we're not going to give you any win bonuses for the season, but what we're going to do is we're going to have a £5 million pot if you get in the Premier League. And you can imagine all the players just went, are you having a laugh? Get in the Premier League. Do you know how good this team is? Because he's only just like taking over. We're like his favourites to go down. Anyway, he managed to convince them all to take this offer of a £5 million pot if they got in the Premier League. And of course they did it. So unbelievable. There you go. That's a true story. So
And in that season in the Premier League, DJ Campbell was one of the top scoring English players in the division.
Mm.
In what was maybe a brief candle when he was at the top of his game, do you think he would have had an argument to maybe get an England call up?
Oh yeah, I mean, people would, people were talking about him getting an England call up. It's just because it's Blackpool, isn't it? It's like it's little old Blackpool, and it's not since Matthews and Morty that well, no, Alan Ball was in. Alan Ball is our last England player, and he was in the 1966 World Cup final. But Jimmy Armfield used to play for England as well. But since those days, we haven't had anybody really played for England other than England under 23s, or we've had a few play for that. Tom Ince played for them, but no, it's very rare a Blackpool player gets in the England side. But we used to historically.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit more of an unconventional pick moving into number 3 after DJ Campbell. So, Lee, if you could explain your thought process behind going for this duo in number 3.
Yeah, sometimes you say you can say your favorite striker, but sometimes strikers are pair up, and we had two prolific strikers. Eamon Okeefe, Keegan Parker joined us in 2004 to 2008, and Andy Morrell joined us in 2006 to 2008, and they just had this amazing partnership. It was a season Blackpool got promoted back into the Championship, and this was in 2007. We got promoted into the Championship, which then led obviously to us getting into the Premier League. But they are the catalyst for getting us out of the lower leagues. Really, we'd been in like League One and League Two. We'd had to apply for re-election way back when, and we'd been out of the Championship for 30 years. 30 odd years. So you imagine that's like a long, that was really like, all my time of watching football with my dad had been watching Blackpool in League Two and League One. That was it. I'd never been higher than that. And then to get in the Championship, it was just such a major thing. And we played Bradford in 1996, and we were winning 2-0 in the first leg of the playoff semi-final and lost 3-0 at home and didn't get there. And it took us like another, if you can imagine, another 10 years from then to get to another Championship final, which it's a long time. 10 years is just such a long time. And so for them to do it, Andy Morrell scored 4 goals away at Swansea as it was getting near to the end of the season. We went to Swansea, who were like, up near the top, and we beat them 6-3. And Andy Morrell scored 4 goals on that day, and it was just an unbelievable game. And then Keegan Parker, he scored the winner at Wembley. Well, the second goal, which saw the game off, and it was a wonder goal from about 30 yards out that he curled in the far corner. And so he's just legendary for that game, for that moment, for getting Blackpool back into the Championship after like 30 years, or Division 2 as you would, as we fell out of. And everybody, I remember, my dad used to say when I was a kid, he said, Blackpool are a really good like second division side, but we just, we can't stay in Division 1. We're just not good enough to stay in. And when Blackpool fell out of the second division, everybody just thought they'd just go straight, they'd be straight back up again. And of course, it 30 years it went on for. So they are, really historic for doing that. And I couldn't choose which one of them I like the best, because I like them both equally, and both feels like, they changed my life there. So, yeah.
Yeah. So talking about them as a partnership, was it a bit of a traditional big man, little man? Are there any shades of maybe Jerry Yates, Gary Medine?
No,
Who
because
would you maybe compare them to? Yeah.
You can't really, because neither of them were tall. But they just read each other's game really, really well. And neither of them was a tall striker. So I can't really compare them with anybody. They're just Parker and Morrell. That's it. They're just legendary for that, really.
Yeah, clearly a very good understanding between them. Anyway, let's move into number 2. So, Lee, I know this is a man who will live long in your memory watching Blackpool over the years. Who's at number 2?
It is Eamon Okeefe. Eamon Okeefe is somebody who he was like ex-Everton. And I just remember my dad coming home and going, he heard on the radio, he come home, he had a taxi at the time, and he came home and he's saying, I can't believe it was bloody Eamon Okeefe. He was going absolutely mental about him. I hadn't really ever even heard of Eamon Okeefe. It wasn't, my dad was going mental. I thought, who is this Eamon Okeefe? And he came to Blackpool in the March of 1985, and he was just unbelievable. We got promoted that year out of League Two into League One, and my biggest memory of him, well, there's two memories of him. One, he scored against Chesterfield, and he hit a ball so hard to score this goal that it really did literally take the back of the net out. And I've never seen a ball come in as fast. It just came like an absolute rocket. So I remember him for that. And also we went to Darlington, and we needed to win at Darlington to get automatic promotion. And Blackpool don't very often get automatic promotion. We normally go up in the playoffs. It's very rare we do an automatic. And I went with my dad, and we won at Darlington. And the things I can remember really of that night is all the Blackpool fans just wouldn't leave the stadium until Sam Ellis, who was the manager at the time, came out of the dressing room. They were just like cheering for him, and the police had to bring him out to send us home because we just wouldn't go. We just kept calling for Sam Ellis, so they brought him out about 20 minutes later. So that's one of my like biggest memories, and the fact that we got promoted like before the end of the season. So he then started the next season with Blackpool, and he was absolutely, honestly, he was scoring like a goal a game. He was unbelievable. And I remember there was an interview with him on I think it might have been on the radio. It might have even been on Granada Report on the local TV show, and he was, they were interviewing because he was so prolific. And after they interviewed him, and then he blooming got the injury that ended his career that same game. So it was a shame, because I think Blackpool could have maybe gone back into the Championship then. You know what I mean? We were really flying, and of course Eamon Okeefe was a big loss. So he is one of my, my first real love of a player. He was the one that I just idolized. We had Paul Stewart as well at the time. He was also very, very good with Eamon Okeefe. And of course, he went on to play for Liverpool and City and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, but Eamon Okeefe was just, to me, almost number one.
Were there any specific attributes that Okeefe had, maybe that made him stand out from some of the other players on this list?
He just, at the time he joined Blackpool, it was a little bit like you'd signed a Premier League striker in a sort of a league, in a fourth division team. He was just unbelievably good. I can't, just everything he did was, it was like watching a superstar playing, and I just couldn't get over this player, how good he was. He was only little, but he was quick. He didn't lose the ball. He just scored great goals, and he was just so much better than anything I'd ever watched, to be honest. It was signing from a Premier League team, and he made such a big difference and got us up. So that is really it, really, with him. Just
Clearly a standout name in some lesser eras of success for Blackpool.
Oh yeah. We weren't used to that kind of player, to be honest, or seeing that kind of player. He just was. If you were today, someone like Swindon Town suddenly signed Ronaldo, you know what I mean? They'd be like, oh my God, it just look a million times better, wouldn't he, than what they've got? And it was the same with Eamon Okeefe. He was just a different level that I'd never seen before.
Right then. Next up, we're going to find out who's at the top of the list.
Yes.
So, Lee, was there only really one man who could be right at the summit of this list?
Yeah. There can only be one man for me, and that is Brett Ormrod. Brett Ormrod is my favourite striker of all time. He had two spells with Blackpool. He came in 1997. He played to 2001. He broke his leg in October of 1999. And that season, we actually got relegated. He came back the following season, and we got promotion back into League One from League Two. And he was just phenomenal. He was just unbelievable. And I remember him, some of my greatest memories is the playoff semi-finals, which were against Hartlepool. And Brett used to do a somersault celebration when he scored a goal, and his mum had said, "You've broken your leg. Do not be doing, a somersault celebration." He scored against Hartlepool, and of course he did. He did his somersault, and he did it at Wembley as well when we got to the playoff final. It was an odd playoff final because my ex at the time, her best friend was getting married in Italy, and our little boy, he was I can't think now, he was 3, I think, and he was going to be the ring bearer, and the wedding kicks off at the same time as the playoff final, and I knew this was going to happen because obviously this was all booked about 3 or 4 months in advance, and I looked at the date of this wedding in Italy that we had to go to, and I thought, that's the day of the playoff final. I said, oh my God. I said to everybody, Blackpool will get there because I can't go. You know what I mean? This is just typical. And I had this lucky hat that I've worn all season, and my dad went to the playoff final, and it was in Cardiff at the Millennium Stadium. He wore my lucky hat. It was one of those trapper hats, the really fluffy with the long ears and everything. It was a trapper hat. It was like boiling, and it was about, 100 degrees, but he wore it all the way through to take my lucky hat with him to the final. And when I was in Italy, I had my phone on me, and Sharon didn't know I had my phone on me, but I was waiting for any sort of, if it had rang in the middle of the wedding. But anyway, as we came out, we're walking back to the hotel and everything, and my phone rang, and my dad's on the phone, and he's saying, well, we're winning 3-2. He said, there's 5 minutes to go or something. He's on the phone like this to me, and he went, oh, hang on, Ormrod, it's through. And then you just heard the goal go up as we went 4-2 up, and my dad going actually mental on the phone down the phone to me. So it's just always a memory, that one of Ormrod. And then, of course, he then came back to Blackpool in 2009 to 2012, and he scored the winning goal to get Blackpool into the Premier League at Cardiff. And then he scored one goal in the Premier League, just the one. And it was, everybody knew that if Brett scored a goal in the Premier League, he would be the only player in history to score for Blackpool in all 4 divisions. So it was a massive thing for Blackpool fans that, that Brett Ormrod got this goal. And we beat Wigan on the first day away at Wigan. We actually had a home game against Wigan, but our stadium wasn't ready because they built a temporary stand through the summer, and it wasn't quite ready. So we had to play it away, and we went away and won 4-0. Blackpool fans, Blackpool were actually top of the league. We were top of the Premier League for 3 hours, because then Chelsea played later on, and I think they won 5, so we got knocked off the top spot. But Blackpool fans who'd had a bet on Blackpool being top of the Premier League got paid out, because they were actually top of the league for 3 hours, but we were top of the Premier League. So they all got paid out on that bet. And Brett had a sitter at Wigan. He had an absolute sitter and missed it. And then it took him almost to the end of the season to get his one goal. But and honestly, when he scored that goal, the Bloomfield Road went absolute, honestly, it went mental when that goal went in. It was just unbelievable. And so he's just a legend. And he was probably one of the best players I've ever really seen play for Blackpool. And I was driving a taxi for my dad, and I picked up this guy in the taxi. I ran him home. It was late at night on Saturday night. I was working a Saturday night, and get this guy in the back, and I'm talking to him, and he says, he said, which team you support? I said, oh, but I'm Blackpool. He said, well, I'm a scout. He said, I'm the chief scout for Man City. And he said, you've just signed a player. He said, I've been looking at him for City for like over a year. He said, he's unbelievable. He plays for Accrington Stanley. He said, he tracks back, he scores goals, he's fast, he's electric. He said, he's called Brett Ormrod. He said, you just look out for him. And I can remember waking up the next day and say to my dad, God, I had the guy in the taxi, the other night, telling me to sign this Brett Ormrod. He said, he's going to be amazing. And he really did live up to everything that scout said. And so, few memories there of Brett Ormrod, but yeah, unbelievable. He was we lost him in 2001. Southampton came in for him. Gordon Strachan, who had been looking at him, and signed him for 1.75 million. And at that time, when they signed him, Blackpool could only get 9,000 in, and we were averaging about 5,000. You know, Blackpool would average about 5,000 a game, but Brett Ormrod was like really prolific. I think he had 19 goals by December. He'd scored that. I think it was 19, and thousands were going on the gate. You know what I mean? You couldn't get in. It'd gone from like 5,000 to like sold out at 9,500. You could not get in Bloomfield Road because everybody wanted to come and see this wonder kid, this Brett Ormrod. And when Southampton signed him, I was devastated. I must, you know, every Blackpool fan put messages on a message board to him, wishing him all the best of luck at Southampton. It didn't quite work out for him there, but it was a really sad moment. And we sold him for 1.75 million, which Blackpool fans, you know, we never saw. It never got spent on any players. So it's often rumored where the Oystons buried that 1.75 million. It was just never ever found. So yeah, but he came back and you know, got us in the Premier League. So it's forever my hero.
Yeah, there was only really one name that could reach the top of this list. Okay, that brings us to the end of this fan debate show. Thank you so much for your insight, Lee. It's been great to listen to. Please do subscribe to Football League World TV. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you check out Lee at Lee Charles TV, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much for having me.